I'm Kim, and I'm here today to give you some tips and tricks to make your food prep for the Whole30 easier. I realize when I've been helping a lot of friends and patients do food prep for meal planning for the Whole30, that a lot of people are doing the Whole30 when they don't have any experience in the kitchen at all. So I thought that I would just spend a few minutes to show you guys how you can use some simple tricks in the kitchen to make your food prep a lot easier. So the first thing that's the most important is to make sure that you have a really good knife, and you want to make sure that you have the right size knife for your job. So the first thing I'm going to cut up is peppers. We use a lot of these in our family, and the first thing I do is I just kind of cut at an angle along the top, and then inside the pepper there's a membrane, and if you just cut kind of along that angle, you eliminate the entire membrane and the seeds. So I'm going to do the same thing all the way around. And if your knife is sharp, you can cut that membrane out easily if some of it does get stuck in there. So every time before I do my food prep, I do sharpen my knives just to make sure that I'm working with a really good utensil. So after that, I just cut my peppers into strips. And then if I'm gonna put them in for fajitas, they're in the strips that they need to be. If I'm gonna use them for a dip, this is a nice size for them to be in a dip. And then if it's a recipe where they need to be chopped, then it's very little work to come along and just quickly chop them. The cutting board that I'm using I really like because it has a slip-proof bottom, and I think that's really important just to prevent accidents in the kitchen. Okay, so there's the pepper. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is celery. We eat a lot of celery in our house. I've already gone ahead and washed the celery, and then I've taken all of the stalks off and just have gotten down to this middle heart part. What I like to do is I like to take this off. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the end off of this, and then this is gonna go into the freezer to be used for bone broth. And then I'm also gonna cut the tops off, and these tops are gonna go into the pot, the Instant Pot for bone broth also. I'm just doing a few stalks so that you can kind of see how quickly this can go. And I'll do the same, even if I have 5 or 6 stalks or 8 stalks, I'm gonna do it exactly the same way. So I'm gonna cut the white part off. Those are gonna be composted. And then I'm just gonna cut these like this so that they can be used for dips. And then if I want to come along later, I'm gonna cut these in half, and I'll dice them if I need to use it for a soup or something like that. But again, I'm gonna use a nice big knife. I'm gonna hold these pieces together and just kind of move my knife along the bottom of them to get a nice chop on them. And it's that simple. All right, so we're gonna do a lemon. We use a lot of lemons in our water. I also use it in my bone broth to give it a little bit of acid, and in my homemade mayonnaise. So what I love to do is I love to juice my lemon and just kind of soften it up a little bit. That helps the, that just helps it be a little bit more juicy when you cut it. Just cut it right in half. And then I love this little gadget for juicing a lemon. It makes it so simple. You just squeeze it, all of the juice comes out, it separates the seed. I like to drink warm lemon water in the morning when I first wake up. So that's it, super simple. All right, if you're gonna do fresh herbs like rosemary, I actually have a rosemary plant in my kitchen. Whole Foods has them around Christmas and Thanksgiving, so I always get one, and it lasts me pretty much through the whole winter. But what you do is you just separate the small little branches away from the big one, and then you just take your fingers and you pull down, and all of those little rosemary leaves just come right off, and that makes it really easy to then just chop. It smells so good. Using fresh herbs adds so much flavor to your food. so for garlic, this is your garlic bulb, and each one of these is a clove. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. If it calls for minced garlic, you just take your garlic clove and you put it down inside of here, and you can tell I use this a lot. I love it. Then I use the back of a knife to just get that minced garlic off of there. Now if they tell you to crush your garlic or to chop your garlic, put your bulb on your board like this, use a wide knife and hit it, and that will help loosen the skin so that you can really easily pull that skin off, and then you can just chop it. And that's it. All right, one of the staples on the Whole30, of course, are sweet potatoes, and they can be a little bit difficult to cut if you don't know an easy way to do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you that. What I like to do is I like to just cut them in half, and then I stand them up. These are gonna get quite peeled. So this is a peeler that I like to use. This is an OXO brand, and it does a really nice job of making it easy to peel your vegetables. So then I stand it up like this, and I cut down in half again. And since this is a pretty big sweet potato, I'm gonna cut it a few different times. You wanna make sure that you have a nice uniform size if you're roasting your sweet potatoes in the oven so that they all cook evenly. And then I just come along the top, give it a couple slices, and then come from the back. Now they're all a nice uniform size so that you can roast them. I'm gonna dice up some tomatoes. I used to avoid cutting up tomatoes because I just felt like there was never a good way to do it until I realized that a trick to doing tomatoes really well is to use a knife that's serrated like this, and it just really penetrates the skin really nicely. So I'm just gonna take the knife, cut into the flesh of the tomato, and just slice it. Even on a really ripe tomato like this one, cutting it with a serrated knife makes it so much easier. I felt like my whole life changed when I learned a great way to cut an onion, so I'm going to show you guys. So what you do is you cut the onion right here, and you're just going to make one slice through and just cut it right in half this way. Okay, and then you're going to leave this part intact because this is going to help hold your onion together. So cut the top part of the onion off, and then peel the skin off. I'm just going to wipe this down so none of this ends up on my onion. All right, so I'm just going to cut the onion in slices. So I'm going to hold it firmly with my fingers, and with my sharp knife, I'm just going to slice little bits here. Okay, and then I'm going to cut down on it. The nice thing about cutting it this way is that you can really decide what size of onion you want for your recipe and just chop it. So if you want really finely diced, you just cut it real thin along those cuts. And if a rougher chop is okay, you can just come along and give it a bigger chop. And then at this point you throw the end away, and if you want to do a little finer dice after you have it all cut, you can just run your knife along it like this. And I just find this to be the simplest, fastest way to cut an onion. All right, we eat so many avocados, and I have a couple different ways that I like to cut avocado. So one tip is, if you look at your avocado, if the stem comes out really easily like that and you have an indentation like that, That is a perfectly ripe avocado. I like to buy the great big bags at Costco, let them ripen on my counter until this point, and then I put the ones I'm not going to use that day into the fridge and wait for them, just let them sit in the fridge until I'm ready to use them. So you just take a sharp knife, run it along, and cut your avocado in half. The part that does not have the stem, then one way that I like to do it is I like to just peel the skin away from the fruit. And I do it this way if I'm doing using my avocado for a nicer presentation. Like often I'll do this for breakfast or those kinds of things if we're having guests. So you can just do it like this, and then you can slice it at an angle. And it's just a nice way to do the fruit. And then you can stack it back up and you have nice even layers there. The other way, a little tip for getting the seed out is just to take a sharp knife, tap the seed, twist gently, and the seed comes right out. And then I like to run my knife on the inside and just cut the fruit into slices. And then at this point, I'll just take a spoon instead of my knife, and I'll run a spoon on the inside of my avocado. Wait 1 second. And there you can see your nice avocado. All right, I hope I've been able to provide you with some ways and tips that you can make your food prep for the Whole30 much easier.